Hello, everyone. So I see Eva and Jeffrey with us today. So it's a very intimate session. Welcome to our session on IE-Brown. And there will be a Q&A session at the end. So you can ask anything you want to the panel of alumni. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Isma. So I'm the director of IE University in Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brunei. Today, we'll be speaking to some of our Asia-Pacific-based alumni from the IE-Brown Executive MBA program, which is a special joint program between IE in Spain and Brown University in the USA. So it was designed for executives who seek to inspire those around them and disrupt the future of business. The program develops strategic leaders equipped with a broad vision and ability to innovate in a complex and evolving business climate. So speaking of this climate, which we are all living in today, we will be discussing about the topic of leadership in uncertain times. But first, let's get to know the alumni on the panel. So first up, we have Gregorie Perez, who is the director of Xchange in the Philippines, which is an impact-first incubator that invests in and supports early-stage impact enterprises. Greg is strongly committed to achieve social impact, particularly in social equity and poverty eradication through entrepreneurship, education, and culture. Say hi, Greg. Lovely to see you here.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Greg. Next up, we have Alexis Talcott-Curry, who is the Asia Pacific General Counsel for CCL Industries. She's based in Singapore, and her primary focus is M&A and material litigation across the multiple and varied business, encompassing diverse products from polymer banknote substrate, apparel, RFID tagging systems, washing machine trims, and the labels decorating many of the products found in your home, car, or workplace. So I like what Alexis said about it. It's the biggest company that you've never heard of. So hi, Alexis.
Hi, Isma.
Thanks for being here. So last but not least, we have Biswajit Lima, who is the former vice president of Macquarie Group based in Australia. He is an expert in developing business strategies to drive change and capabilities for high-profile projects in consulting, account management, and stakeholder management in capital market space. Say hi, Biz. Nice to have you here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Great. So let's jump into the questions. So we're talking about leadership in uncertain times, right? So could you share with us some reflections on leadership challenges during the recent times of uncertainty? First of all, what were your expectations as the COVID-19 situation was unraveling? And what was the reality you faced? Maybe we can start with Alexis.
Oh, no problem. Well, I mean, I think perhaps I'm not alone in a complete naivety of what was about to unfold. And I recall I was in Australia in January 2020 and talking to the GM of one of our business units about supply chain issues, getting raw materials out of China, and thinking that there were probably going to be some supply chain interruptions and potentially some business interruptions across the globe, but having absolutely no idea just the depth and extent of what was to come. I think as one of the things I think for us as a business is that we're highly decentralized and we have a lot of local management leading our local factories, running in a fairly autonomous manner. I think that served us quite well as we progressed through the pandemic, as different countries face different issues at different times. So I think not having a highly centralized approach led out of the US, or in my case, my organization is headquartered in Canada, helped us to navigate the issues as they happened real time in each country. But one of the things that our organization really relies on is executives being able to travel. And I think one of the things, one of the issues in our leadership then that transpired with the inability to travel or with the complications that were attached to travel and no criticism of the public health measures that governments needed to take. But I think we really missed some of that kind of water cooler chat, or the ability to do face-to-face conversations that were difficult. And our decision making then, it was missing something that came from being face-to-face. So I think some of the challenges that we had from a leadership perspective was just knowing and being aware that we were missing some data, some intangible that you would have got had you been able to be on the ground with the business making the decision.
Thank you, Alexis. How about you, Biz?
Yeah, sure. What Alexis mentioned about the disruption in supply chain and complete change in the way things were working, and it's kind of similar in our case as well. Like in financial services, is so risk-averse system, a platform that they don't want to go away from office. Working remotely is kind of a huge challenge in this industry particularly. But yeah, there was some hesitation, some chaotic situation were there, but eventually people get on board, and like human being find their way to find a solution kind of in a way. Yes, there are those curious talks and the collaboration and things like that in-person human interaction thing, which Alexis touched base on. That one is definitely a missing point, but I think we have much more avenue to explore. We understood that, okay, it can be done and business can evolve in that way. And a lot of strategy as an organization, as I was in Macquarie, a lot of strategy was to focus how we can decouple the strong dependencies, in-person dependency, and replace with something better or evolve through, that is something I believe as a whole, it is like an experiment at the global scale on humanity, how things work. And definitely there are a lot of new things coming up, and I'm pretty sure that new ideas will be like Zoom kind of thing happening, like overnight it become a kind of the defector tool to interact. So there will be a lot of stimulation and innovation. I think that is a good thing to take away, because if we fail and we're not learning from it, then it's a failure. If we're learning from it, definitely that is a plus. That way I can see that. That's how I see this disruption.
Yeah, that's a great point, Biz. So, Greg, how about you? Do you miss the water cooler chats and the human connection?
Yeah. I mean, I can relate with what both Alexis and Biz have mentioned. I like how Biz had mentioned the experimentation on a global scale, and definitely, we're seeing a lot of innovation. People and teams have had to try to do things differently. So on our end, so kind of on two levels, right? Within the team level, there was this challenge from the leadership perspective of maintaining productivity, which you lose some of, but at the same time being making sure that your people are well taken care of, and that you're thinking of their well-being, and allowing for the realities of working from home. If they have young kids, so maybe they're not working straight from 9 to 6, maybe they're taking a break during lunch, before lunch to handle the kids or whatever it is, because the kids are also going to school online. And so like me, as a mother, I have a child in grade 2. I feel like I'm also going through grade 2 again. And, we started when he was grade 1. And so, allowing for those types of realities, rather than closely monitoring your team. I think this is a cultural thing anyway, but really focusing on productivity and output rather than timing in and timing out. And on the side of our investees, because as you mentioned, we are an impact investor. We checked in with our different investees and, how are you doing? And we didn't really realize, as Alexis was saying, that this would last longer. So we were asking, do you have enough runway for 6 months, 12 months? Here we are almost 24 months later, right? But I guess not so surprisingly, but not so surprisingly, there are still deals happening in the space because there are still opportunities. And so, yeah, definitely agree with the point on innovation. And the challenge for us is, how do we build back better? You know, we can't just come out of this and do things the same way, right? So how do we take care of each other better, you know, be prepared for the next pandemic, and you know, a lot of large issues in the world that the pandemic has made more visible. And so I think that's a challenge for leaders everywhere.
Well, that's a nice segue to our next question, which touches on positive leadership, because management theory suggests leaders in uncertain times require positive leadership. So what has been your experience of being a positive leader? And what lessons did you draw on from the Executive MBA program to navigate that? Greg?
Yes. Shall I start? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, as a positive leader, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty. And as I mentioned, you know, in terms of being the architect of your culture and making sure that everyone is okay, you really set the tone. And you don't necessarily have to say that I know what's happening. I think there is some vulnerability that's okay to say that we don't know what's happening, when we will emerge from COVID, when it was, you know, when it became clear that it wouldn't be 3 or 6 months, but this is what's happening. And so I think really constant communication with the team is important. One thing specifically from the IE-Brown program, you know, we had several sessions on, I forget now what it was called, but it was kind of like an improv session, right? And one thing that I learned from that was, instead of saying yes, but, you say yes, and so you're kind of building on each other's ideas and reinforcing and uplifting each other. And so I think that energy is so important in these times of uncertainty.
All right, thanks. Alexis, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with what Greg says more. And I think to her point, you know, two things that I took away from the EMBA, which I think really in the same vein as Greg has mentioned, the idea that you need to communicate clearly and honestly, and not to hide from the fact of the ambiguity and the fact that you might not have the answers. But secondly, and even specifically to what Greg has said, that actually being the best leader doesn't necessarily mean having all the answers. And in fact, perhaps being the best leader means you've surrounded yourself with the best people and you're leveraging their skills and experience. You're building, you know, in this concept of yes, and you're building on what they know to be able to come to a conclusion. And you know, being honest with your staff or with your stakeholders, that you don't have those answers. But I think being positive means being optimistic, but that means being credible that you have a way that you're going to solve the issue, not glass half full and easy as she goes. So I think they're the two things I took from the EMBA and that.
Great. Yeah, definitely. Trust and vulnerability. I think you need a lot of courage in order to have that and grow that, right? So Bis, how about you? What's your experience with positive leadership?
Yeah, certainly. I absolutely agree with Alexis and Gregorie on that thought leadership, and as well as having the empathy, the thought process. What I want to say is positivity is one part. Being too optimistic is also not the reality of the situation. So I felt like EMBA makes you a little bit aware of the being more rational and more practical, and have an idea, a structured way of thinking the problem, so that you can articulate, you can triage it, and then approach that problem in a more humane way and more rational way, rather than driven by emotion. I know this kind of time is very draining for everybody. Keeping that in mind, that structure, that thinking process structure that provide EMBA particularly, because it's such a vast, broad scale area of expertise that is you interact with as an alumni, as a group, you know, as your curriculum is so vast. It's not traditional MBA that gives you facets of every aspect of business and society and culture. So it is very, it makes you a little bit wiser, I would say, like So as you grow as a profession, you always try to accumulate knowledge, but as you grow older and become more mature, you try to give up those things which is not relevant. It's not about knowing what information, but knowing what is more relevant, doing what is more relevant. That's structured thinking. Actually, I think IE-MBA is quite good at it, and I got it's one of my that strength or the learning, which definitely helps for this time kind of situation, that I would say.
All right. Well, one of the things you mentioned was leaders being drained. I mean, not just leaders, but everyone, right? So would you say that the pandemic has distracted leaders from other crises? Biz?
Yes, sure. I think I will partially agree to that one, because yes, there are priorities suddenly changing and every day changing. Different people, everybody having their own world of problem they're running with, and when the organization and work and home or life is just it's kind of intertwined. It's very hard to segregate it. It's so priority keeps changing, so you have to adapt to that one, and leaders also try to come up through that one. However, at a core, at the basic level, we all are human beings, and those problems, those thought processes, those things remains the same for business as well. So I think there is certain aspect of changing the priority. Yes, our lot of investment and gone in medical research on COVID, bringing on the COVID became the most thing on the news everywhere. However, there are other things also going on in parallel, especially in terms of innovation and technology, that is going to make our life much more better. That thing I believe is more a valued and a positive aspect that we can see. And the fundamental concept of the work-life balance is I think Jeff Bezos was saying, like, there is no concept of balancing it out. You should look for the harmony. And that's the thought, that is the key from whole decision, that we should look out for that harmony rather than over focusing at a certain thing and looking at that way.
Great, thanks, Biz. Greg, maybe you would like to share about what you think other crises the leaders are not able to focus on over the past couple of years.
Sure, yeah, I think with the pandemic, of course, safety has really been paramount, right? How do we keep our people safe? What protocols do we put in place? What infrastructure do we need? If people are working from home, what kind of support are we giving them? Whether it's internet connectivity, and again, that flexibility, how do our policies change? And so really a lot of the things that have been happening, of course, during COVID have been around this issue of well-being and safety, and what does it mean in terms of the future of work. But to your question, and has it distracted from other things? I think it's kind of been the gift of a pause, at least for our team, right? Where sometimes you're going in one direction, but this has allowed us to kind of reflect and take a look at the market. And that's one of the things also that came out of the EMBA, right? Kind of this next sensing and empathy and trying to see what's next. Because what we really need to look at are the long-term issues, right? So one of my favorite questions is, what trees, metaphorically speaking, need to be planted today? Because this thing, what needs to happen in 10 years, and how do we prepare for that today? And so, that kind of long-term thinking, strategic thinking, we can't, that's not something that should be ignored. As you know, right, there is the urgent and the important, and then there's the not urgent but important. And so I think as leaders, that's really definitely one of the things that we should continue to keep in mind. How do we build for the future, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The last couple of years have definitely been the years of reprioritization and different perspectives. Alexis, how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm halfway between Biz and Greg. I'm not convinced. I'm not sure. I don't know that I have a definitive answer about whether the pandemic has distracted leaders. I think that there's been a lot of public commentary in this vein, particularly in terms of environmental or other sustainability goals and the challenges that businesses are facing in that sense. I think my experience there is perhaps a little varied. Certainly, I think good leaders, good business leaders are able to manage multiple fires on multiple fronts. They learn the art of delegation. I know my own board of directors has certainly retained a focus on ESG issues during this period, and we are still reporting on matters up to our board. I know that our customers are also similarly focused and continue to be so. So I think that, perhaps it's a different experience or, a different outcome for different businesses. I think perhaps what the pandemic has done, and to touch on your points, is perhaps open bare some of the other issues that perhaps have been a little hidden under the surface while times are good. And when times are bad, they come to the forefront. So I think, Greg has mentioned the focus on mental health, and I think that's certainly a challenge that we've seen in the workplace, and that I think business leaders are going to continue to focus on the mental health as well as the physical health of their staff. And I think we've probably seen as a broader picture, perhaps, the issues around insecurity of work insecurity that can come out of perhaps contracting arrangements rather than permanent staff, and the issues that have been created as a result of the pandemic for those sorts of employees. I think they are some of the challenges that businesses will have to face in the coming years.
Thank you. So we've talked quite a bit about business and quite a bit about humanities as well, which is the core theme of the IE-Brown curriculum. But how is it relevant in a world where technology disrupts every aspect of business and society? Maybe we'll go back to Biz on this one.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting to see the Brown curriculum is so unique in its own way, and it's one of the reasons it is so top in its ranking and all those achievements and the type of talent it draws. Because there's an interesting quote I remember from the E.O. Wilson, the professor in, I think, Harvard, said that our Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology is the time where we are living. So our emotions are completely controlless, where I have a platform to express ourselves a lot rather than thinking a lot. And the institutions are not up to the mark where things are moving, a lot of bureaucracy. So in this context, as a leader, you also have to have that whole holistic viewpoint. You can't really dislocate yourself from all this aspect of change in business, society, and as human being as such going on. And with IE-Brown's approach or the curriculum, that the way the focus is there, actually, it is in a way looping all this component together and giving a different ideology to you, a different spectrum which is something you are not aware of. That gives a lot of maturity to deal with or think of or planning your organizations and risks and all these aspects, and all. You can have a better view. Just let me give, if I give an example, like you interact with every kind of, like Gregorie is in ESG assessment investment kind of area. I'm in finance. If I have any questions to ask, I can have a leverage lawyers in our group. We can leverage all the humanities guys, NGOs people are doing. So we have an access to all this point along with our study. And end of the day, I was again repeating maybe this point, like end of the day, we are human being, and business is the end of the day, consumer is the human being is the consumer. So we are still the society, and no matter what technology is producing or what the end product, it is actually eventually for consumption of the human being. So that's the market. So the problem with rational or irrational problem with human being will remain. and will be impacted by the society, and there's a whole other part components. So I think it is very wise. I believe every business school should look out and learn from the IE-Brown's curriculum and implement them, because end of the day, you can only make it a more mature leader for the future, rather than only a particular, because the economy is shifting from this shareholder to stakeholder pretty, meaning it's very prominent now. Even the investment trends are like 70-80% are going in on the ESG kind of investment. It is a clear-cut priority changing, and we need to have an understanding of all this aspect, and that is regardless of the technology. I think it is very essential to have the humanities part. And another point, just to before I mention, technology is a tool. What happens on many organizations, many leaders thinking like, okay, they drive their strategy based on technology, but technology is just an enabler, just a tool. We should not be focusing our strategy around the technology, rather than utilizing the technology to uplift our vision or mission of the organization. So that should be that kind of differentiation, I believe. I don't think any other school is having that kind of curriculum that we are having, in IE-Brown. It's a very energetic IE side of business principles, business learning. There is a very clear focus, research-oriented Brown side of humanities things. It's a really beautiful mixture, and I think everybody who has experience, I believe they all will agree into that. But yeah, with that,
well, thanks for that refreshing perspective, Biz, because there's so much talk on technology and going digital nowadays, but you've inspired me to think of things differently, because at the end of the day, we're all humans, and humanities is still the overarching principle above all else. Thank you so much. How about you, Greg? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely agree with everything that Biz has mentioned, right? The future of work, or whatever it is human, because I mean, society, everything, right? That's all, we're made up of people. And so, as leaders, we think about the social contract. We think about how will this disruption affect. I mean, this is not the first time. I mean, we're talking about 4.0, or the new economy, right? From industrial economy to the information economy and digital economy. So there have been disruptions. So making sure that you have people at the center of that, and using technology as a tool, as Biz had already mentioned, not, again, as I had mentioned earlier, to build back better, right? To imagine a better way of doing things. So going back to the idea of really this holistic view of the world. And so one of the things highlighted during the IE-Brown program was really all these negative externalities, right? So if you look at balance sheets, for example, we don't have biodiversity. We don't have forest cover. We don't have any of that. I read this article that the biggest e-commerce company in the world threw out X amount of value of computers, or whatever it is, because it had been fully depreciated on the balance sheet, right? So kind of, okay, does that mean that there's no value because it's not in the balance sheet? Is it just GDP? And then, this debate has been around for some time, but the IE-Brown program gives you the space to think about that, to look at history also. We had, one of my favorite subjects was a history subject. And so to learn from that, and then again, to ask the question, what does it mean to be human? Because that is the fundamental question that the humanities asks. And the IE-Brown program is making the argument that business and humanity are not two separate things, but really one thing combined, that business has that responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. And Alexis, how about you?
Yeah, and I don't think I can improve on the answers that Biz and Greg have given there. I think, perhaps to recap, I agree, technology doesn't exist in a vacuum outside of society. It has to interact with society's cultures and norms. And I think that business leaders who have a foundation in humanities and who are able to look at that interaction between technology and society, and view their product through that with the benefit of those other principles, they're likely to get a better outcome. They'll build a better product, get better sales. Ultimately, if they can consider the holistic view of it, it's positive all round. So I agree entirely with where Biz and Greg have gone.
Great. So Alexis, how did the IE-Brown MBA help you to grow as a leader? Professionally, maybe you want to share something personally as well. And how did your career change after the program?
Yeah, well, as you said in my intro, I am a corporate counsel. I work for a large manufacturing MNC, and I think when I started the program, I very much, I realized the role of a lawyer is, I guess, to be precise, and it's to deal in the detail, and your accuracy is number one. And as I went through the program, there was an understanding that I built about what a role of a leader is, outside that context of what my professional experience had been. And I think perhaps they're not mutually exclusive, my role as a lawyer and my role now as a leader. But certainly as a leader, I think there's times you need to decide with speed over precision, and you need to make trade-offs, and you need to deal in uncertainty, and that's not necessarily a comfortable place for a corporate lawyer to be. Facts are a lot easier to deal with. So I think being able to clarify in my own mind the difference between how I would approach a problem as the lawyer and how I would approach the problem as the business leader helped me grow. It gave me a different skill set. It gave me a different language to use. It gave me a different way to approach problems. And it's not to say that my role ceases to exist as a lawyer, or that one is better than the other, but certainly I think the way that helped me was to help clarify the way in which I might approach a problem.
Great, thanks for sharing, Alexis. How about you, Biz?
Sorry. I agree with the clarity part with Alex, absolutely. It's definitely something I took it from the program, but just to underscore that same viewpoint, is like what you achieve in your life is your goal. Your action defines your goal, but your value defines your attention. So what your attention actually defines your value. So that is something I learned in the IE-Brown program, that what I should reflect and pay attention to as a career. Like 16, 17 years, I was in corporate world, investment banking, going things in crazy, Deutsche Bank, Barclays, Macquarie, like it's going in a different trend. But after the MBA, I kind of having the seed of entrepreneurship is kind of I is quite popular with the spirit of entrepreneurship. And 4 of my classmates in Brown, IE-Brown, we sat together and we were thinking about some interesting idea, and I kind of now going ahead with the startup journey, something I could have not even imagined. Probably if I look at my career the way I used to, the next could be another MNC or another big bank. But I kind of, that reflection of, and that confidence that IE-Brown program as an MBA, it's a renowned high prestigious school that provide this, the confidence. And I will tell you, share a personal story. We are reaching out to validate our concept, whether business idea is how good though it looks good in spreadsheet, it looks all this, our break even and everything looking fine, business model looking good, all those learning we put together for brainstorming, all those components. And we are validating, we have experienced professors that we can validate whether it is true, and that access we have. That is very unique. A lot of startup entrepreneur, unfortunately, they may not have that one. they go with more emotional with the driver, emotion being a major driver. But we got with a lot of statistics analysis with a spreadsheet, crunching number day in and out, and coming with the right business model to see whether it's gonna be a viable, and validating, able to validate those things in terms of operation, in terms of strategy with the professors who's, meaning they're quite experienced professors, right? They can provide they are providing very constructive feedback and viewpoint, and it's really interesting, you know. That is a takeaway, a kind of interesting thing, something at least personal and professional kind of mixed way, that I'm going. We are embarking on that journey. So I kind of started from August, focusing on this startup and try to this early stage, but nevertheless, that confidence to jump out from the corporate safety net career kind of thing and doing something completely utter wild probably would not have been possible without IE-MBA. That's something I would say that's a you know, diversion, or it's just a learning. It's a different learning process. It's like something I am enjoying. Is a bit draining, but it is a good ride so far.
Thanks, Biz. Greg, how about you?
Yeah, the program, the way it's designed, the fact that there are 2 campuses, at least during our time, it was Madrid and Brown, right? We didn't have Cape Town yet. And the online platform, you know, just all of these things, plus your classmates, the people in your cohort, really pushes you out of your comfort zone. And so you're surrounded by all these, you know, brilliant people who have done well in their careers. IE and Brown did such a fantastic job of putting a diverse cohort together. And so there was a lot of competition. You know, we were in a way in competition for each other for the grades, right? But at the same time, it was very collegial, very supportive. You know, we really formed a bond, and so you know, it really pushes you out of the comfort zone. And going a bit back to what I was saying about the online and you know, that format, right, with the face-to-face and the online. So it teaches you both to think on your feet. But during the online format, especially me being based in Manila, right? You wake up and there are already 100 posts or whatever it is. And that format forces you to dig deep and think and peel the onion. You know, you cannot just say something that is the obvious. That will be taken maybe in the first 5 posts, right? But in order to bring value to the conversation and not just post for the sake of posting, you really have to dig deep. And so that, I think, really was an important skill as a leader. And you know, what Alexis and Biz were saying about clarity, you know, the program doesn't give you all the answers because that's not possible. The situation, the reality, it might be a different pandemic or a different emergency 10 years from now, but it will give you the tools and the framework to approach it. How do I think about it? You know, the value system, and again, peeling the onion, the analysis, the step-by-step, the entrepreneurial mindset, all these mindsets that have already been discussed. All of that, you know, contributes to you becoming a better leader. So in terms of my specific career, I was executive director of a social enterprise when I joined the program. And then after that, I moved to the investing side. So as you mentioned, I'm on impact investor and incubator. And it also helped me in the sense that, you know, I didn't really appreciate marketing before. And so now I have a better appreciation of what that is and why it's necessary and how to measure the ROIs. And of course, the advanced financial management, you know, doing the valuation and all that. So both on the technical skills, you know, there's a reason why IE is really at the top of, you know, of its class in terms of business school, right? And the IE-Brown program together makes it even more special because of the humanities side of it that we already talked about.
Okay, great. Well, there are a lot of executive MBA programs out there, right? So you've mentioned a few things about the program, but what would you say is the number one thing that makes it different? And why did you choose IE-Brown? What made you say, okay, this program is for me? Great.
So at the time, I actually joined the second cohort. I joined the first cohort but deferred, and then joined the second. So it was an experiment. And I appreciated that a business school was experimenting, was being entrepreneurial also. They identified the need in the market. And so, I was willing to be one of the guinea pigs. But more than that, I had taken a look at other programs, and a lot of them, just the output, the end game was different. As I mentioned, I was in social entrepreneurship and now in impact investing. I didn't really want to become an investment banker or become a consultant, and so that wasn't the path for me. And so the big attraction really was the coming together of the business school with the humanities slant. The humanities perspective that I already mentioned, plus IE's strong reputation for entrepreneurship. That was really key for me. Plus the diversity. I didn't know that at the time, but since you're asking, really, the diversity of the class and the professors that we met, it really made for a special program.
This is some great points there. Alexis, how about you?
Yeah, I similarly, the diversity was actually one of my goals, and I think I'm cohort 3. So by the time we got to number 3, there was a little more data about who were the kinds of people who were doing this kind of course, and that the curriculum spoke to me. But I think what I really was after was looking to do a course that was going to put me outside of my bubble, put me perhaps in an uncomfortable position, put me with people who, think or act or approach problems in a different way that I did. So that idea that the cohort was global, people from all over the world, diverse in terms of their of their geographical location, their professions, their experience, where they were at on an entrepreneurial journey or not. That was, I think, one of the key items that attracted me. And then, I think the throw in the curriculum, I was quite keen not to just be, another cookie cutter management consultant, with all due respect to the other business schools. But like Greg, that wasn't what I was after. And so I think the curriculum proposed with the humanities element really suggested to me that was going to give me a grounding that I think had become clear that was, needed for business leaders going forward.
Thanks, Alex. And Bis, how about you?
Yeah, mine was more, I knew what kind of program I want. And I didn't apply to too many schools, to be honest, because I already enrolled with, I'm an NCED alumni already with the executive course. I had already sold myself to go with MBA, with the executive MBA with NCED, but same time I was looking what my plan B, to be honest. And I was exploring something which is the top ranking school and which is something dynamic, somewhere I can, real executives are there. However, when I discover as an alumni, you have a much more easier way to, there are other recommendation, you can get it easier to get into this business school which we want to go. But I got sold with IE-Brown on its 3 factors. The kind of alumni is there. In my group, it was 38 is the average age. Like it's everyone is mature. People were there with 55, 50, 60, even 60 years. That close, that sort of maturity experience. People were there in that cohort. A lot of things is not about learning from executive, particularly from executive MBA. You will learn more from your classmates than the curriculum by itself, because your classmates and your alumni network is always there forever. It's just for life. And that is top business school, obviously, both things that those 2 criteria met. Humanities actually is a surprise. I was not aware of that humanities and focus MBA is there, to be honest. And then the more I dig into this one, delve into this particular, my interest grew, and like, okay, everybody is large by large, and normally they give similar MBA curriculum, Wharton, and many other top business schools. However, IE and Brown, they have completely very unique, they're kind of opposite polar in terms of the way they operate and the way they function. But they've come up with something very unique, and it's very interesting. And I think that was the best decision to get into IE-Brown. And it's also another factor, the third factor I was talking is, it's not huge like hundreds up to thousands of students. Like in many business school, executive MBA, you got 200 students, huge cohort. And you can't really have that quality time. With IE-Brown, we got like 45 people, from individual people by person, and you understand that the bond in the quality of interaction is happening is quite rich. I think that is much more value add, and your access to your professor, your ability to ask more openly the question, the discussion, the maturity of the discussion, those things actually, I don't think that anybody can replace those kind of quality and the viewpoint of from every diversity kind of not diversity, not in terms of the just look or the way we see the society, but in terms of the experience, in terms of the depth of the understanding, in terms of the kind of job they do is completely different. Even though this 45 candidate, but they bring up with a lot of unique component with them. And at the age of 40, around 38 on an average class, you can see only the mature discussions coming up. There is no time passer. There is no lag. That is one of the factors actually I chose IE-Brown, and I'm really glad that I am part of it.
Thanks for sharing, Biz. So we are coming up to our last question, but before we move on to that, I see we have one question from Eva, which will be answered right after that. Jeffrey, Syed, Melissa, this is your chance to ask any questions. I'm not sure when else you will get this opportunity to have this intimate session with our alumni panel. So please take this opportunity, just write it in the chat. But yeah, let's all together go to the future. So what characteristics do leaders of the future need? And how is the IE-Brown program responding to this need? Do you think the future of work and leadership are evolving? So let's go with Greg. What do you think?
Yeah, so we've touched on, a couple of the answers a bit earlier. Definitely a holistic mindset that takes into account negative externalities. Our economy, as you already know, it's extractive. Plastic, for example, is artificially cheap. And so therefore, as a result, people just throw it away and they think that it's okay, but they don't see the cost of the environment, right? The cost of fossil fuels and all that. So I think that type of holistic mindset is definitely needed. I think an entrepreneurial mindset, you don't necessarily have to have started your own enterprise, but the mindset of design thinking and empathy, and really that bias for action and making something happen, right? And taking agency of what you can do. I think that encompasses entrepreneurial thinking, and definitely that's very strong in the IE-Brown program. And as there are a lot, but I'll limit this to my last point. The last, I guess, would be the importance of diversity and inclusivity. The world is shrinking ever smaller. You're going to meet all kinds of people, the millennials and the Gen Zs, whether it's about gender or whether it's about ethnicity. We are all in this together, right? And embracing that and creating a culture and an organization that is inclusive of all these voices and perspectives. I think that's also very important. And definitely something that you will get from the IE-Brown program.
Thank you, Greg. How about you, Alexis?
I cannot improve on Greg's answer there. She's covered the field. So I think, all I would say is that this isn't a theoretical idea. We saw in the global financial crisis or the Great Recession, depending on what you call it, from where you come from, if you have a narrow approach to business, to making money, you end up with narrow outcomes, and that's a disaster for the globe. So I just reiterate everything that Greg has said, and said it bears out in in the empirical evidence.
Great. And Biz, how about you?
Yeah, I think everything is covered. But just if I may have to give a 2 cents of mine, I think the future of work also going to change a lot. The way we are operating is going to change. Our career expectations are going to change. It will be a much more portfolio career. It will be much more automation. A lot of component technology is going to make it life much more easier, so that we don't have to do a lot of manual things. So that comes back to your core value proposition, which already touched base about emotion, emotional intelligence, and all those components will be much more prevalent and much more important, critical. Those are actually not soft skills; they are essential skills, to be honest. Unfortunately, if you look at the history, I think I read a very interesting quote from one in an article. It says, we learn from history we learn from the history that we don't learn anything from history. So a lot of thing happens in history, it repeats, and unfortunately leaders don't learn it. So when you are looking at the future, and we need to have a reflect back, saying that we should not take that mindset off, that okay, it's done, and come back to things as usual. Like I think Gregorie multiple times emphasized that build back better, and that is much more important to see if when you're looking at the future, how it happened. And to be honest, because of the kind of technology is coming, and your life is going to be completely augmented, a lot of things are happening, and which happening for better reason. Those things are not necessary for us, and we need to focus much more on value that we can generate from a business context. So I believe that should be the hope, and that should be the direction we should go ahead.
Thanks, Biz. So let's move on to the Q&A portion of the session. So Eva, she is curious to know about employee engagement. So her question is, as a leader, what were some of the new innovative ways that you've applied to engage your employees during this pandemic and the work from home situation? So Greg, maybe you can share your experience.
So for this, we turned to technology because everyone was working from home, right? So we utilized Slack as a kind of way to check in. How are you doing? So in the beginning, it really started out as a, are you feeling sick, or, are you symptomatic, or things like that, right? And then it evolved into just this way for us to connect and to say, I'm okay, right? To check in with each other. And then the other thing that really made a difference that we did very differently during the pandemic is we started this Friday fun team check-in day. And so within the team, the host would change. And so it might be me this week and my teammate next week, etc. And it was up to the host to do whatever she wanted to do. So it might be a game on Kahoot. We played Among Us. I don't know if anyone has young kids here, but we played Among Us one time. And, it was just kind of this oasis within the week where you kick back, relax, you don't talk about work, and you just have fun together. And so that really improved engagement a lot and well-being. And so one time we also had a yoga class and a meditation class. So it really depended on the host. But yeah, that was one way we leveraged technology.
Sounds like a fun team, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah.
Biz, how about you?
Yeah. Definitely Greg had a lot of fun. But yeah, we are doing like similar thing, like a cocktail party, remote, online. But one thing, actually, I came up with an idea to break the barrier between a lot of newcomers were coming to the team, and there are a lot many senior people were there in the team, and the knowledge transfer was kind of not that much fluid because of the remote kind of setup. So we kind of came up with an idea, create an just open table discussion, kind of once in 1 week or 2 weeks, twice in a month, so that people may come and ask any questions without feeling judged. it could be anything, and the condition is that you have to come and ask anything to anyone, and you can get an answer, and everybody having an open mind. And that gave a lot of emotional boost, and a lot of confidence among young new joiners. That is something actually the part. Actually, on a side note, actually, I was looking at the Microsoft CEO's discussion, and he was saying that how you have been, for the similar question to that, how as a leader you have been able, and he answered like, one of the best way the barrier reach out is that you can reach to your upper senior leaders in your organization, because it's available in chat, and all these emails and everything is completely virtual. So the barrier of the fear is reducing. People can ask, and their leaders are encouraging that you can ask these questions, creating a forum, and they can reach out to the people directly on multiple level and get a perspective of what is happening and what the ideas. And because those copy chat are reduced, so this is also another innovative way, so that we can and they are also writing some AI algorithms on these tools, so that it can filter out all those discussions criteria and new ideas, and put it in a pre-collect it on an upper better platform, and people who have the interest, they can collaborate and do work, and they can get some more feedback and more understanding from what is going on. So that's that assimilation of idea that is very organic, and I think it's also something to look for. That is, the world is going to be semi-virtual, semi-argument, or whatever it may be. It's not going to be the same way we used to do business every day. Like even the organizations also have like you can come or office couple of days and work remotely, those kind of arrangements happening. So it would be interesting to see how it gonna leaders are going to change this narration and the approach and the new idea to make it more productive and as a whole industry.
Yeah, thank you, Bis. How about you, Alexis?
Well, I think, I was reminded, the question reminded me of a course in the IE-Brown program, which is called Managing Communities of Work. And it has at its heart this concept that the workplace is a community, and communities means, being in a community means there are mutual obligations. So, perhaps no longer the approach of a direct and control unilateral flow in an employment arrangement, but a community being one where there is a relationship built on reciprocated trust. So when I think about how to, how employees, I've been able to engage and motivate employees during the pandemic, I think part of it is also just to take a slightly different approach, is making sure that staff feel like they are trusted to perform the work, that they're going to be judged against the quality of their output, not by their face time. And that reciprocated trust, it comes back. And I think that helps lead to engagement and empowerment.
Great, thanks. So we have a second question from Jeffrey. So he's asking, is the program equally weighted or a little more weighted by Brown, since IE has their own MBA and EMBA programs? Do you feel the program is centered more to Brown? Greg, what do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think there was a good balance. The core business school courses were there, right? Again, as I had mentioned, marketing, advanced financial management, strategy, etc. And the Brown side was complementary to it. It wasn't secondary. I think they were, as is the partnership, on equal footing.
Nice.
From what I saw, but yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Bis, how about you?
I would like to get more clarity when you say centered is on what aspect, probably, but if that is not, I just need, before I answer, a little bit of clarity that centered in terms of what, in terms of management, in terms of curriculum, in terms of teaching, or kind of. But if I generalize in that way, it's a balanced program, but what the approach is, you will find very distinct. The way Brown faculty teach or approach their subject and the way I approaches, it's quite different. And it is drastically, meaning there are two different kind of institutes. Brown is a research institute and it's academic kind of thing, and Brown IE is much more dynamic, much more business focused, and kind of that context. So I believe you have to really see, but I think it is necessary, both of the aspect, as all we're talking and throughout the session, that why it is more important, because we need to have both side of visibility to be a leader. But there is an interesting question came, maybe I will just speak it and I'll leave it to you. What's the reason for Cape Town? Actually, Cape Town with trip is the core, one of the best experience in the IE-Brown program, because whatever you have learned, you are going to a society and you are implementing that particular business model or approach, a solution, which is going to be actually implemented on the ground, and you will be part of something tangible and a social impact. And the philosophy behind business should be for the society and for individual, for people, is very centered, and this particular core theme actually being executed at the Cape Town. It's really interesting experience. If you get an opportunity and you are there, that's a once in a life kind of opportunity. We will learn a lot from that experience. I think others will agree with that Cape Town trip, but it's really a lot of idea and eye-opening, to be honest. It's really thrilling experience that I would say.
Thanks, Biz. Alex, how about you?
I think my experience in terms of weighting IE to Brown is I felt it was equal. I don't think, I don't look at it as being a Spanish program or an American program, an IE program or a Brown program. And I think perhaps to that point, one thing I think is important is this is not an MBA with a humanities piece tacked on the side. The humanities element from Brown is fundamental to the approach in the business, the typical business side. And when you get to the end of the the program and you're delivering your final coursework, you are expected to be able to show how both of those typical business but the humanities piece interact. So that, in my to my mind, I think is built into the program. And again, to mention on Cape Town, I'm like Biz, it was the most incredible experience I've ever had. It is unlike anything that I've ever done before, and I don't think I could adequately put in words just what I personally and professionally took out of that experience. It was incredible.
Thanks, Alexis. So you've mentioned the countries, Alex. So for the last question, so IE is based in Spain and Brown is based in the USA, and you are based in APAC. So how has this mix benefited you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said before, the real purpose of choosing this program is the diversity of the cohort. And so, as I say, I don't see that the program is specifically geographical in any particular way. It is, I think, a global program, and the fact, I think Biz mentioned before, you learn as much from your your cohort and the people you're studying alongside as you do from the formal curriculum. And so when you have a truly international cohort, I don't think that experience goes astray just because you're in APAC. APAC is part of the globe.
Thanks, Alex. How about you, Biz?
Yeah, I will say that I'm a practical person. Let me tell in a practical way. So it's not going to be an easy ride, to be fair, because the time zone is quite different, and professors are also different reasons. So the interaction of the questions, as I think Greg already touched base on that. The moment you open your contribution, you see that already thread is grown to hundreds of much more mature, the content. So you have to put extra effort it's not for every faint-hearted person, to be honest. It's very demanding. It demands a lot, because the kind of expectations from the program, the kind of group you will learn from is quite mature, and your contribution should be valued. It's not just for that context. It's going to be challenging. I'm not going to make it more simpler. You have to put your heavy weight. The more you put into, the better you get out of it. So that's something I think my mentor in this program, he said that one. He's an alumni in IE-Brown. Before joining, this is the exact word he said, that the more you put into that program, the more you get out from it. So don't take it lightly. First thing, the learning will be incredible. Though you are APAC region, there are groups are there, which is like maybe Spanish, the European group or the US group, where the discussion could drawn to certain area, but you have an opportunity being on this side of the world to bring those discussion topic in your context, so that they can also understand, oh, what is going on about maybe a climate change. I remember a situation where the bushfires was covering all our air pollution, and we are not able to see the sky, those kind of things. The amount of devastation, like 1 billion, 2 billion, and animal they died out of that bushfire, the magnitude and the quantity, they are not able to capture that particular the impact. When you are bringing that, when you are discussing about eco and ecology and biodiversity and sustainable investment, and you bring this perspective with the number, saying that this is the impact, this is the contribution, this is the thing, the discussion goes into a different dynamic. So you have a very different perspective from your side to contribute. That's one aspect. APAC is also 60% of the population living in APAC area, global. So you have a very diverse, culturally very diverse society, and you can also bring a lot of aspects from the developing world side of thing, because Europe and US, they are much more developed world. So there's certain discussion that can go in certain direction, but you have an opportunity to bring a perspective, and that's what makes this whole program more interesting. And a different perspective from the APAC is always a bonus thing. But yes, you have to be very careful. It's gonna be demanding. It's not gonna be joyride.
Well put, Biswajit. All right, Greg, how about you?
Yeah, so not much to add to that, actually, but just to emphasize also what Alexis was saying, right, about it being a global program. So the fact of the geography doesn't really come into play, and that was actually also like a secondary reason for me. I didn't want to go to a program that was just US centric in terms of content and perspective, or just Europe or Spain. And so through the curriculum design itself, and then again the diversity, which we've mentioned multiple times, that really doesn't come into play geographically. But now, having been done with the program, how that has impacted us, I mean, you can really see the learning, the leadership, your growth, whatever form you came out of at the end of the program, you keep on learning and growing and continuing to grow, right? So APAC, they're saying this is the decade for Asia. So there are going to be a lot of opportunities, whether it's jobs, whether it's economies, becoming a single economy, and jobs opening up. And as Biz had mentioned, if you are interested in the nonprofit or in the impact space, definitely there's a lot of opportunities there. So the program is really prepared for that. And also, the network in the Philippines for IE and Brown is very strong. And if you do want to, if you're starting an enterprise and you want to go abroad, you have networks, you have a footprint all over the world, right? From my cohort, I have somebody from Russia, from Portugal, from Japan. And so that international flavor is really, I think, more key to your question about, how has the program benefited you as somebody in APAC?
Thank you. I think that encapsulates the program well, Greg. Well, that was our last question. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be the host of this session. Thank you to all the alumni. Thank you to the participants who's been with us today. If you'd like to know more about the program, my email is in the chat. You will also receive an email from me right after this. So yeah, have a great evening wherever you are. Thanks for being here. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks, Asma.
Thanks, Isma.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.